Well, it's a case of dodging the showers today. It says some sunshine and some rain. It seems like it's been predominantly rain so far, but it's bright, so we're going to get a few of these seeds in, and I think I'll be hopping in and out of the shed because this is the seed edition of Allotments for Fun and Food, and we're going to be doing some seed saving throughout the morning. And I'm going to start off with these beans and get these in. I'll put them all in here and we'll work out which ones of the seeds we're going to shell and keep and which ones we might eat during the winter as pulses. So we'll start with the gigantes and the climbing ballotes and we'll go from there. Well, it wasn't a huge crop, but there's a good few in here, and if nothing else, if we like them, we'll have some seed for next year's growth. Climbing ballote beans. Into the shed, I think. It's starting to rain. So I'm just going to clean these up, and anything that I think's relatively new and soft, I'll probably keep for eating. And everything else, I'm going to shell and get the beans out of here, unless they're really still very young and tender, in which case I'll put them out to dry. I'll have a good look at them and decide the best way forward. Well, on balance, these have still got too much moisture in them, and I think they're going to need drying out. There's just one or two here. Let me find one. Probably like this one, which is pretty well dried out, and you can see the beans in there are ready for harvesting. So I'm going to put these into the polytunnel on a rack and allow them to dry out thoroughly, and then I can get the rest of the seed out. Might just eat that one. So the polytunnel is going to act as the drying room for these seeds over the next few weeks. I'm going to clear my bench, and this will be the last use of the bench this time of year. Eventually I'll take it down so I can work in the bed below, but for now it's a drying bench. So I'm going to take all these trays off and just lay out the beans that I'm bringing in, and the important thing is to remember to label them. My memory is not what it used to be, and I really need to make sure I can remember what's what. Not least because some of these ballote beans are climbing and some of them are dwarf, and I'm sure I'm not going to tell the difference later on. So we're just going to get these out onto the bench. I'm not going to be too fussy, but I am going to try and make sure there's air between them, because if we get any that decide to get a bit of mold or a bit of fungus, then of course it will spread if they're touching, and we're not going to need hundreds and hundreds of these. So I've picked the best ones that I've got, and they're going to be ballote climbing. On to the next. So the gigantes of all the beans seem to be the ones that are still growing. So I'm just going to take a quick look at them and see whether I think they're ready. And I don't think they are many of these beans haven't really podded up fully yet, so I think it's going to be those that I'll leave for another week or two. They're still very flat, and whilst this bean is flatter, we'll open one of these up. Yeah, the beans inside are really not mature. I'm hoping they will come to maturity. We'll see. So it looks like the cannellini is going to be next. Well, that was quite interesting. The Bellotti beans, the dwarf variety, was really last minute stuff. If I'd left this much longer, I don't think I'd have had any beans. They were really getting to the point where the outer shells or pods were nearly rotten, and you can see once I get to this stage there's a risk of losing the seed altogether, but there's plenty in there, and that one's been infected by some sort of insect. And so what I think I'm going to do with these is take them out and dry them outside of their pods, because I don't think these pods are going to do the remaining seeds any good at all. And we'll put them in a container and dry them in the polytunnel. Well, that was very interesting. With regards to the dwarf blotties, that was what we took out of the pods, and I have to say, really, on that basis, I don't think this is a blotty bean that you would expect a high yield from. One or two of them have gone a little bit brown, and I think they're probably best taken out. So really low level of yield, and I guess if you grew a lot there would be a reasonable supply. So I'm going to put those in the polytunnel to dry. And then the cannellinis, well, there are an awful lot of these smaller pods and they've got literally nothing in them. So if you split one open, there is absolutely nothing. So none of these are going to yield any pulses. It's these bigger ones that actually have got the seed in them. And yeah, the seed's quite a reasonable size, but the amount of pods that I had with seed in them was very low indeed, just a handful there. So again, I'm going to dry those in a polytunnel and we'll see how we get on with them. But my immediate reaction is I don't think these are a particularly good high yielding pulse bean for the winter months, and they're probably best eaten fresh off of the plants when they're small and this sort of size, and I'm sure when they're young they're very tasty. So at the moment, as far as pulses go, I think probably not a great success, but we'll see how we go and we'll taste some of these at a later date. So that leaves a crop that I know I can trust, and that's the good old Tsar runner bean. So I'm going to give that a full cropping and see what we get. Well, that's one hell of a crop off of that row of beans, and most people look at the beans and think, well, they're over now, and I look at them and think, here's next year's growth, and here's food for the pot now, and there's food for the winter. So a few different categories. Those that I want to shell because we can eat them now, and you can see what a great pod full of beans we've got there, and these would all be great to eat now because they're moist, soft and ready to cook. We'll put those in the ready to eat pot, and then we've got those that have already turned brown, and to be honest will only worsen for leaving in the pod, and they've already started to dry and thin, and I'll get these into a pot for seed keeping. We'll put those, I think, in here. We'll take those home with us and dry indoors. And then we've got a whole load of pods that if I have too many to eat right away, we'll just lay out and dry. So there's quite a lot of work to do. It'll take me a few minutes. Well, quite a long job, but well worth it. So these are all the beans that are in really good condition, and they'll dry out there and be that much easier to pod in good time. And these were from damaged beans, and they will go in the pot today, and they are going to be absolutely delicious. And these were the beans that were dried and really came out of the pods incredibly easy, and you can see how big they are. Fantastic beans. And there's a whole bunch of runner beans in there of a different variety, and well, we'll keep those going. Well, you could probably call it the bean edition rather than the seed edition, but we've got a good old crop of beans there, and be interesting experiments to carry on during the winter, tasting those pulses. And we'll dry the rest of these out, put all the pods in the compost bin, might put some in the wormery, and we're all done. Next step will be taking out all those old plants and preparing the ground, and hopefully be able to get some garlic into the old bean pod, as long as those gigantes come through and dry out pretty quick. If not, they're coming out anyway. I do hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, click the subscribe button, click the like button, and if you want updates from me each time I upload a video, click the bell and select all. I do hope you have a great day. Diolch yn fawr.